All right. First, hello, everyone. Before we get into it, I want to just introduce myself. My name is Ben Moody. I am a realtor and property manager with Keller Chervenic Realty. Give you a little bit of background on myself. I graduated from Lakeview High School in Cortland, Ohio in 2009. Attended Cornell University, studying sociology and human behavior. I also played football and ran track. Once I came home from college, I became an EMT. I worked as an EMT and went to paramedic school and firefighting school for about 6 years in total until I got hurt, wasn't able to do the job anymore, and got into real estate. Now that's the quick overview, but before I get into discussion about investing, I want to talk about where I come from so that you can understand. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is going to be obviously the opinion of one person. I work as an agent. I work with investors from all over the world here investing in Northeast Ohio. There are a ton of different options when it comes to real estate investing, and really your investment strategy is going to be as unique as you are. So just because I think something's a good idea, or I work through and share the different opinions of what led me to the opinions that I do have, doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree, or you may find a better strategy that works for you. I'm going to try and cover as much as I can in this time period. But to get into that, growing up, I'm from Northeast Ohio. I was really raised with the traditional option of I could either go to graduate high school and get into the military, or figure out a way to pay for college. Both my parents are retired from General Motors. Those are really the two big options. Going through high school, I happened to work hard and get lucky and get accepted into Cornell University for football and track. Now they don't do athletic scholarships, but there was some grant funds there. But my plan growing up was I'm going to go to college, I'm going to play football, I'm going to go out of state, I'm going to move out of Ohio, and I'll come back when I had a couple $1 million in the bank and set myself up on $100,000 a year salary and use the other money to invest in real estate and stocks and let somebody else tell me how much money I made every year. Sounds like a great plan, super easy. When I was in college, my junior year, I was playing football. I had done a couple of team training events in between sophomore and junior year with the Cleveland Browns, Baltimore Ravens, and Chicago Bears. Went into junior year, ended up breaking my shoulder and clavicle on the left side. Had to have 2 reconstructive surgeries. I had to take off school for 8 months. When I came back my senior year, I wasn't cleared to train and was basically told that some of the academic grant money that the athletic program had was going to be repositioned for somebody who could help the team. Ended up coming home with 23 credits left to graduate. Actually, 19 of them were gen ed courses, but was really kind of stuck at that point. And it was, well, I can't finish the school that I went to, and I'm too banged up to get approved to go to the military. I tried. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And I figured, well, if I can't do the military, I could probably find something in public service that I can do even with my shoulder. That's what led me to get into EMT. And actually my plan even then was I'll just get hired at a fire department. That'll be my full-time job. And eventually I'll get into real estate and have that side hustle going. 6 years into that, I broke my shoulder again on the job. So a 3rd reconstructive surgery. And at that point I was pretty stuck. Growing up, it was you can join the military or go to college, but even going to college, it was you graduate, you find a 40-hour-a-week job, and you do that for the next 30 years, and hopefully you have good benefits. And that always kind of scared me. That's why I always wanted to have a side thing going. Real estate was the option. But after...
Hey, Ben, if your shoulder's that bad, you and I definitely need to play racquetball.
Yeah, right. Well, see, it's my left arm though. I'm right-handed.
You and
I
I
can still
definitely.
go now. So yeah, when my shoulder broke again the third time, I actually had to walk
Okay.
with my clavicle broken places for I had to go to 5 different surgeons. It was the third reconstruction and the final reconstruction. I finally had to go to Cleveland Clinic, found somebody who would take on the surgery on the condition that I sign a waiver stating that I can be a public case study for him. Basically, he told me that if I ever break it again or do anything to it, nobody will ever touch it, and I'll just have to live with it. But anyways, getting back to it, at that point, I was on bed rest for the second time in my life for 6 months. My arm was in a sling 24/7. I couldn't eat on my own. I couldn't drive. It was really kind of stuck and was like, well, what do I do now? And couldn't do anything physical related. And I did a lot of hard thinking and realized that I may not know what I want to do, but I knew that I definitely didn't want a desk job for the rest of my life doing the same thing every day. It just scared me to death being stuck, not feeling like I was accomplishing anything, and just in that rise and grind mentality. And I happened to be talking about it one day and somebody mentioned, well, if you don't want a desk job, why don't you get into real estate? And at that point, real estate was always just kind of that side money. You couldn't make enough money doing real estate to actually live off of. In fact, when my dad retired from GM, he became a real estate agent. And watching him, it was always there's no money in it. But I will preface that he got his license in 2006 and the housing market crashed in 2008. So probably not good timing on his part. But that was all I knew really about real estate. And I started looking into it more and more and doing some research and getting on YouTube and reading books, and was like, holy cow, there's actually a way to make this a full-time income. All I knew is I was on bed rest for 6 months. I didn't have a job. I was staying at my parents' house, obviously, because I couldn't take care of myself at the time. And I made a decision. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to get my real estate license, and I'm going to learn everything I possibly need to learn about real estate investing so that when I go to do it myself, I don't have that learning curve. As bad as it sounds, I actually became a real estate agent so that I could learn and potentially fail with other people's money and not my own beforehand. But I made a decision. I signed up for Hondros Business College, their online program. They estimated that it takes roughly 3 to 4 months to complete the program. Being on bed rest and bored out of my mind, I completed it in 2.5 weeks. I passed the course. Passed the course, signed up with Keller Williams. So for anybody that knows, if you do get your real estate license, in order to take the state test to actually become an agent, you have to be backed by a broker. So really you sign up for the company and interview the company that you're going to work for before you even get your license. Keyword there, you interview the brokerage. It's not the other way around. But anyways, got backed by, signed with Keller Williams in May of 2018. Took my test, passed it on the first try. Actually had to have my dad drive me because I was still in a sling and they advised not driving on painkillers. So he got to sit around for 3 hours while I took the test. Found out I passed the test on the first try. So I signed up with Keller Williams in May of 2018. My first official day wasn't until August 7th of 2018. Now, they say nationally for the Board of Realtors, they say on average, a new agent will sell between 2 to 4 houses in their first year. They really don't consider an agent established until sometime between year 3 to 5. That's normally what it takes to get a couple of sales underneath your belt, start building a clientele, getting your name out there, building that sphere of influence, and working your way up to a consistent business. And I'll go into that a little more towards the end here. But basically, to round this out about me, from August 7th of 2018 till December 31st of 2018, I did 11 sales. 2019, I finished with 23 sales. And then for 2020, it was a little low. I'm finishing, looks like it's going to be a 14. I've got 2 in closing right now. Hopefully they all go good. It was a little slower, but 2020 was also the first year that I started doing property management. Our Keller Williams office has 6, now 7 with me, property managers through our 7 offices. They manage a little over 500 units. And in 2020, I started working with them. I convinced the brokerage to expand to Trumbull-Mahoning County, which basically translated to, hey, let me do this. And so far, I've signed 9 management accounts with 23 units in total, and hoping to build that to the 100 to 150 range by the end of 2021. So to round that out, my plan was always been to investing. Unfortunately, 2020 was my plan to start investing on my own and shifting away from, selling real estate as being my primary income. But thanks to COVID, it got pushed off another year. But 2020 is going to be a big transition year for me. So with all that being said, why I wanted to highlight that real quick is I am really about 2 steps ahead of somebody in college who's just starting out and getting ready. I do not have any properties of my own yet. Everything that all the knowledge I've gained has been through watching the success and failures of others and my clients specifically, and their different model structures of business. It's allowed me, becoming a real estate agent has allowed me to develop the skills and knowledge that I need to be confident in making my first purchase and building a portfolio from there. So as I said, it's really going to be up to you. Hopefully I can share some practical information that you guys can use and implement if you decide to. Really my goal for this is in all of the research and learning and watching YouTube videos, I constantly see videos of people like, do this strategy. It's super good. You'll make a ton of money. And there's no practicality to it. Like, hey, do the Burr method, but they don't explain how mortgages work or what kind of financing you need or down payment or closing costs or anything that actually help you. So that's what I'm going to try and cover today. If I say a lot, I'm not a public speaker. I'm sorry. Just bear with me. With the topic of today was supposed to be commercial and residential real estate, and considering the options if you are looking at getting into real estate investments. I would highly recommend that you start in residential. Best way to put it in a simple term is commercial real estate is like the Ferrari and Lamborghini of real estate investment, and you're not going to go out and buy an Audi R8 or a Ferrari as your first car. And if you do, you're probably not going to learn much from what I have to say. This will be really from a ground up perspective. Somebody who maybe start with nothing or is planning on starting it as a side job and having full-time job, or maybe something that they can learn an intern while they're in college. And a way to go with that is definitely going to be residential. So in building your portfolio, I'm going to get into a couple of the 3 top, or mainly the 2, and then a hybrid of the 2 top strategies to how to start getting invested into real estate, specifically residential. But the first thing I need to tell you is when you're starting to build a portfolio, the number one thing you need is patience. The initial goal of building a real estate portfolio is not to have money to spend. It is simply to have money. You are going to be budgeting. You're going to maybe not be living the way that you want to live, maybe not a lot of vacations, every spare penny that you can find is going to be put into savings, is going to be put towards renovations, going to be put towards down payments. And it is building a foundation for you to be able to building the foundation for the next 5 to 10 years so that you can live the next 30 how you want. If you're looking for a quick fix or something that's going to just net you $100,000 a year within 12 months of starting it, real estate investing is not going to be for you. But I am telling you, if you stick with it and you're willing to roll with the punches, it is absolutely a way to change your life. And I have seen it firsthand with a couple of investors. I have some investors now that started out, they bought their first investment property with me in 2018, and at the completion of this year, they're going to be up to 7 or 8 properties. They've paid off both of their cars and are taking their first family vacation in 5 years. It doesn't sound like a crazy life, but from what they started with, it's going to take off. And they're really to the point that in the next 2 to 3 years, that portfolio is going to double and then triple. And then they're going to be looking at putting away for retirement, paying off their own house, living for free, having a self-sustaining rental portfolio, which is the ultimate goal. So step number one, your goal, as I said, is not to have money to spend, but to have money. The number two goal, the next step, is to create a self-sustaining rental portfolio. And what that basically means is having enough generated income, either through rental or through thrifting of your properties, that you are able to grow and purchase more properties for your portfolio without having any money come out of your pocket. Best way to think of this is any money that you have coming in from a rental or from a flip going into one checking account, and then what you do with your full-time job or part-time job or whatever other income you have is over here. And if you build the portfolio up correctly, eventually every expense will be coming out of that checking account, and you'll be free to do with your money what you please. So a couple of ways to get into that. The two top hacking methods to get started into real estate, especially in a situation where you may not have the capital to go out and buy a $500,000 10-unit property, is through what's called the BRRRR method, and then what's called house hacking. And now house hacking is just a really cool name for a type of financing that somebody who's trying to sell something came up with that name, but we'll get into it. First one is being the most common, and that's the one I'm going to spend the most time on, is going to be what's called the BRRRR, and that's BRRR, and that stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance. So you use this on your first property. Now, for whatever strategy you choose, I'm going to tell you the first property you buy is going to be the most important. It is also going to be the most stressful, and it is going to be the hardest. For a couple of different reasons, and depending on either one of these strategies or even the hybrid, you're going to see why, and I'll dive into it and how to get over those hurdles. So the first one is buy, renovate, rent, refinance. The goal for this is to find a nice single family house or duplex within a general price range. Normally in the Northeast Ohio area, you try and target things that are going to be under $100,000, specifically things that are in market areas where the property is well below the average market value. So first off, what is market value? Market value is how we evaluate prices of homes when we go to relist. So that is different than what an appraisal is. So when a market value, we look at square footage, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, condition of the property, lot size, and we take all of that, and what we do is we try and build a market analysis based on finding as many comparable properties as close as possible. So for example, if you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that looks like it was just freshly built in 1984, and it's got shag carpets and a nice bright blue bathroom, and it really has the original built-in stove, hasn't had any kind of updates at all, and that's listed at 85, and it's 1,200 square foot, and it's on a half-acre lot. We can actually go into a neighborhood, plug in all of that data, and find something with plus or minus 10% in square footage, lot size, and we try to get within a quarter or half mile of the property, but you can extend if you have trouble finding those. It looks at sale prices of the last 12 months, either active listings, sold, or expired. And basically that can tell you generally if a property is listed at a certain value, what the chances are of it selling. A lot of times people try and make the argument that sellers set the prices in the housing market, but the truth is the buyers do. If you have a property that you put up for $150,000 and it sits there for 6 months because nobody wants to pay for it, it's going to sit empty. Your offers are going to determine what the house value really is worth. You could swear up and down it's going to be 150, but if you get 4 offers and none of them go over 125, then the house is worth 125. And keeping that in mind, we do a market analysis. We find this rundown, incredibly non-updated property, and it's listed for $65,000. We run a market analysis and find out that on average within a half mile, if this house was updated and completely move-in ready, that it could sell for 120 to 130,000. That would be the perfect example of a starter BRRRR property. You're going to buy it for below market value, and then you're going to renovate. Now, renovation can occur in one of two ways. Depending on the type of financing, you may be able to qualify for what's called a 203K. Basically, that's a repair renovation loan, where they estimate the cost of repairs and then they tack it onto the mortgage. So then you basically end up paying for the renovations through your mortgage payment monthly once you own the property. Or you can have cash. If you happen to have extra cash, say you saved up $10,000, $15,000 for the down payment, and it only costs half that, you got some free money for the renovations, you can pay it that way through out of pocket. The goal for the renovations is to get that property up to current market standards, whatever that may take. Once that is completed, you rent it. Now, depending on if you want to be a landlord or not, you have the option of a property manager. I'm going to be talking about that a little later on, going into specifics, but you can fully, especially if you're locally in the area and you're confident with handling it, you can definitely be your own landlord, save some costs there, but you basically do inherit that property as a full-time job on top of whatever your full-time job is as well. I'm going to get a little bit more in depth to that later on. Once it's rented, dependent on the bank that you use or certain banking standards, usually anywhere from 6 to 12 months after a purchase, you can qualify a property for a refinance. What the bank will do is they'll come out and they'll do an appraisal and try and estimate the current value or what they believe the value of that property is based on the updates and renovations that you have done. That's why you want to spend a little more time and money with the renovations to make sure that the property is absolutely as good as it can possibly be. Because then what you're going to do is file for a cash out refinance. And with that, they say, okay, this $65,000 property is now worth 120. In our opinion, we are willing to give you 75% of our appraisal value. And what that does is takes whatever your mortgage was, they pay off the old loan, and whatever's left, the bank will literally cut you a check, and your new mortgage on that BRRRR for your first BRRRR property is going to be whatever the 75% value is. For as much as I deal with numbers, I'm horrible at math, so I'm not even going to try and attempt to figure out what that is. But I would say probably somewhere between 80 or 90 if I did it off the top of my head. But basically, they pay off the old loan. That'll give you $20,000, $30,000 in your checking account for you to do with whatever you want. And that's the revolving door of a BRRRR, because now you have $20,000 or $30,000, which frees you up to go buy a couple new properties and do the exact same thing. Buy, renovate, rent, refinance. And that is a great stepping stone to build a property portfolio, but it does take time. You start with one, you roll with that for the first year, year and a half, depending on how long the renovations take and how long it takes for you to be able to refinance on it. Then you buy one, two, or three properties and you stack, and it just starts stacking up like that, so that every time you cash out refinance, you're able to go out and buy more and more properties until you can eventually transition into multifamilies and commercial size, 5 units or more. And then that is going to be true real estate investment that we all see, on YouTube, or the ads that we see where they're making good money with a few solid high unit properties. The second method is for house hacking, is a type of financing called FHA. Now, FHA is first-time home buyers, generally how it's understood. It's an option through HUD to help assist with the purchase of somebody's first home. It lowers the down payment. A standard conventional could be anywhere from 5 to 10% right now in current market standards, and FHA is usually around 3.5%. So it saves you a lot of money up front. It's a couple $1,000s you don't have to come up with out of pocket, but there are conditions. First, There are FHA conditions on the condition of the property. So they'll come in and they'll look for things like safety rails, flaking paint that could be an indication of lead in the home. Basically, they're going to look over the property, not just to see if it's worth what you're purchasing it for, but if it's safe for you to live there. Because with FHA, there is an owner-occupant status to it. If you use an FHA loan, you must live in the property for a certain amount of time based on whatever bank or financer that you use. It could be 1 year, it could be 3. I've seen some even as high as they require 7 years to live in the property. And you might be thinking, well, if I have to live in the property, how do I make money from it? You can use an FHA loan on a multifamily if you live in one of the units. So basically you go find a duplex, triplex, 4 units. So it has to be residential. So you know, anything up to 4 units is considered a residential property. Anything with 5 units or more is considered commercial in Ohio. So you can find a 2 to 4 unit duplex, triplex, or quadplex, find one with an empty unit, buy it. You only have to put 3.5% down on that purchase price, saves you a lot of money out of pocket. And then you live in that unit. And where the house hacking comes in then is to eliminate your cost of living. And you do that by using the rent of the other units to live off of. So it's almost, you have a self-sustaining, this is almost doing it in reverse engineering it. So for example, you buy a duplex, you live in 1 unit, and once you move in, the tenant next door is paying $600 a month. Well, after you calculate everything out, what your mortgage, insurance, taxes, and income expenses and everything are, you use that $600 a month to actually pay the bills of owning the property. So then you still have your other full-time job, you're using that income and saving. Where the house hacking comes in is, one, it limits your cost of living, so you're actually able to live there and not have to worry about paying rent or paying the mortgage or anything, as long as you keep the tenant next door filled. You're going to be working on maintaining that property and bringing up the value and not letting things go to waste. If there's water damage, if it needs a new roof, new windows, you're going to be consistently doing repairs and renovations to that. Where the house hacking comes in to help you with saving money is you need to figure out what you would be paying if you were living on your own somewhere else. So for example, if the other unit is $600, then you need to think in your mind, okay, that is $600 I'm not spending. That means that's $600 I can save. So you take their $600 a month rent, 10% every month. My recommendation is 10% every month gets put aside and put into a savings account. That is in case of any repairs. If the refrigerator stops working or their bathroom, the toilet starts leaking or whatever it may be, any repairs that you need to do at another unit or at your unit, anywhere on the property, set 10% aside from the money coming in for that. Then the remaining 90%, you're going to use for the expenses, and then look at your own finances and figure out how much you can save each month if you're not spending that $600. If it's the full $600 and you can take $600 a month and put into a savings account, do it. If it's only $300, that's fine. It's just going to take longer to get there. But basically, you're using the cost of living for free to allow you to put more money aside so that you can go buy your next investment property. So rather than relying on the funds of a bank or financer or a big ticket item, you're actually taking the money that you're saving, putting it aside, and using your own funds to move on to the next property. Now, the benefits of this is your next property could be a property for yourself if you wanted. I would highly recommend going and getting another rental property, but if you wanted, you could transfer, find another house, buy it, move into it yourself, and now you have a duplex with $1,200 a month coming in that you can rent, because once you moved out of that unit, you put it up for rent and filled it. You just double the amount of rental income you have. You're now still living for free. You may even have a little bit of extra money coming in now that instead of 600, you have 1,200, and you can save money and go out and buy your next rental property that way. So that's the house hacking concept, is how to minimize the amount of money out of pocket to start and how to accelerate your ability to save money by eliminating a lot of your cost of living. Those are the two big. With the hybrid, is pretty much the same, and you're just taking the two and combining them. So you're using an FHA loan to go out and buy a multifamily, and then you don't want to wait. You're impatient and don't want to wait, or maybe you can't save the money. Maybe you had to do this because your income is not allowing you to be able to live on your own. So you do it in two different. You take every week or money you can set aside and do repairs, put new floors in, replace the windows, repaint the units, whatever you can possibly do to increase the value and standing and condition of that property. And within 6 to 12 months of owning that property, you file for a refinance and try and capitalize on that to bring out $10,000 to $20,000 in equity to immediately put back into a next purchase. Now that can either be a multifamily or a single family, depending on how you want to structure your portfolio. So now that I've talked a little bit about the strategies, I'm going to nitpick some of them. And first one being financing. So I know I talked about FHA loans and cash. There are basically, when it comes to investing, 3 different types of financing that you're going to use. You have the option of the FHA on the first property, cash, or conventional. There are a couple different options in terms of VA or USDA, but you don't often see them being used in investment properties. Some even have stipulations that if you can or can't, most with owner occupancies require that it can't be used for an investment property. So for the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to focus on FHA conventional and the option of cash. FHA is a great option for a first time in a home and purchasing your first property, especially if you don't have a lot of capital or money saved up. However, in my opinion, in looking at investing myself in terms of what I've also seen through real estate, FHA can be troublesome with the higher standards that they have and the low down payment. It is a great benefit to have up front to limit the amount of money you have coming out of pocket. But what you're trading for that is equity. So in only putting a 3.5% down, that means at the time that you purchase, your mortgage is going to be about what you purchased the house for. That doesn't sound like that crazy of a thing, but once you take into account that on a mortgage loan, you generally about the first 10 years of your payments go towards the interest and not the actual principal. If you were looking to try and do a hybrid or use an FHA loan to purchase and eventually do a refinance in a year or two, there's not going to be any money. They're actually going to come back and probably say, even at 80,000, if you bought the property for 80,000 and it qualified at 120, they're willing to give you 90. You still owe $88,000 on your mortgage. It's going to kill it. In order for the BRRRR method or the ability to refinance for that to work, you have to have equity in the property. So now let's look at the other side. Cash. It's always a great option to have that much cash laying around. A lot of us won't have it, but there might be some point in your career that you do. I have learned that there is a very big difference in types of debt, and how that relates to cash is, common sense would say, well, I can make the most money if I just pay for it up front. I don't have to worry about a loan. I don't have to make mortgage payments. I don't have to pay interest. And you're absolutely right. But that also means that when you do go to refinance and pull equity out of that property, you're actually just getting back your own money. You haven't made anything. With a mortgage or a loan, when you refinance and cash out on the equity, you're actually getting the bank's money. Now, I know that may sound a little confusing, but I'm going to explain it a little bit here. So with conventional, generally on conventional loan and an investment property, if you are not going to be living in the property, instead of 5 to 10%, you're going to be looking at a 20 to 25% down payment. Sounds like a lot. It can be. It may take a little bit more time to save, but in my personal opinion, going to conventional loan and purchase on an investment property is the best option. And here's why. One, you will automatically start out with 25% equity in the property. So if you do decide to refinance in a short period of time, 1 to 3 to 5 years, you have equity and you're able to pull the cash out and get money in hand. Two, it's a little more clean. There aren't as many restrictions. They don't have the additional guidelines to say using an FHA type of loan would do. And when people think mortgages are buying a home, generally what they have in their mind is using a conventional loan. It's very simple in terms of writing the offer, property inspection, appraisal, and they will check just to make sure that the property is worth at minimum what you're purchasing it for. And the ability to get a repair renovation loan with a conventional loan is much, much easier. Sometimes with FHA loans, they will actually require that the seller pay for repairs out of pocket before they will approve you to buy the house. That can be complicated, especially if something like a high ticket item like needing a new roof. Sometimes sellers are selling the property because they don't have $15,000 sitting in their checking account that they can pay for that. So just a lot less headaches with the conventional. Now, what I talk about with the equity and the difference between being able to pull out your money if you use cash or pulling out the bank's money, I'm going to give just a quick example here. So for my example, I used, for the house hacking, I did use an FHA loan to consider the down payment, but it really doesn't change the final product here. Say you've purchased a property for $125,000. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes because there's a lot of numbers. With a 3.5% down payment, that's $4,375 that you'll have as your down payment, plus somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 in seller costs for title research, title insurance. There's a whole list that hopefully you're using an agent on your first deal, not knocking wholesaling or going and buying and selling on your own. You're absolutely able to do it. But with that type of money, it's probably the biggest financial decision you're going to make in your life at that point. Get some help, especially with buyers. A lot of people don't know. More often than not, a seller, when they put their house for sale, is actually stipulates up front how much they're willing to pay a buyer's agent. So what that means is 9 times out of 10, especially in Ohio, the seller actually pays for your representation as a buyer. So it's a free service. They're there to help. And it's literally, as an agent, it's my job day in and day out to do this full time, to know the ins and outs and to help guide you. So I highly recommend using an agent, especially on your first deal, until you've built up the confidence and knowledge to do so on your own. Then you're free to do so. But to get into that, so 3.5% down payment. On average, I made it real simple and did a 3.1% interest rate, averaging about $3,500 a year in taxes and $1,000 in homeowners insurance that's paid out once a year, but spread out through the mortgage payment. The total of the loan would be $120,625 with that down payment that was listed. Over 30 years, what you would pay for that house is $185,431.87. First, sorry, I almost moved to my next note and realized I missed a point. The simple fact of the matter is, in the time that you're going to pull out the equity of that property or go to resell, even if you waited 30 years, the chances of it being worth $185,000 for you to break even is going to be very small. On average, throughout the U.S. history, from year to year, property appreciation is usually 2 to 3% on good years. So if you go to sell this property, it's reached a life expectancy of a rental property being 5 to 10 years, and you go to sell, the amount of interest that you've paid in that first 10-year period, you're still going to have, well, let's see, if your loan is $120,000, that means that you have $65,000 in interest, and a majority of your payments in the first 10 years are going to go to that and not towards what the house is actually worth. So with that being said, if you do cash and you wanted to refinance, they're going to come out and look and say, okay, this property, you bought it for 120, you paid cash. We believe it's worth 125 3 years later. We're willing to give you 75% of that, 92,000, and you cash it out. Really, all the bank is doing is giving you $92,000 of your cash back and then adding $60,000 to your interest rates that you're going to be paying on. So that's what I say, when you pay cash, all they do is give you your money back and then make you pay them. You're not really getting any equity out of the property. Whereas with a conventional loan, You put that 25% down payment down and you have that equity, you're paying on your interest throughout the years and 3 to 5 years to go out. Your down payment went towards the equity, not the interest. So you already have that 20 to 25% built in. So when you cash out, all the bank's doing is cutting you a check for that 20,000. That's their money out of the interest and just restarting your loan all over again. All they care about is getting the interest to begin with. So now let's talk about debt. So I mentioned it earlier. If you're like me, you were conditioned your entire life, debt is bad. Debt is bad, debt is bad. If you hear the word debt, you cringe and tingles run down your neck. What I've learned over the last 3 years working with investors is there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is what I would call consumer debt. It is debt for things that bring no value. Things like a car that depreciate in value from the day you drive it off the lot. It is no longer worth what you paid for it. Credit card debts. Using your credit card to go out on a Saturday night and pay for a couple of rounds of drinks with your friends is really cool and it's super fun. But take whatever your bill was, add 20% to it, and it just cost you a bunch of money and you got nothing from it. You got a few hours of laughs, but realistically, you have no assets. Debt based on assets is actually the prime way to make money. What I mean by that is, for example, in real estate. You may think it's bad. You hear me saying refinancing, refinancing, refinancing for these two methods, especially the Burr method. And you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm just resetting my mortgage every 3 years. I'm resetting my mortgage. I'm just making my payments are staying the same. I don't own the property. I'm still going to have to pay the bank this amount of money when I go to sell. And you're absolutely right in the fact that you do have debt, but that debt isn't an asset. As I mentioned, that property is going to normally, on average, throughout the entire history of the United States, every year that property is going to be worth 2 to 3% more than what you paid for it or the previous year. So it's gaining value just by sitting there. You're going to be maintaining and updating the property and renovating the property. So it's gaining value through just your updates, renovations, and conditions. And 3, how it's gaining money is through the bank interest rates. A great way to refinance is to watch the bank interest rates, and you want to borrow when money's cheap. It is much better for you to refinance to get a 2.5% interest rate than to keep the loan you have at 6% interest rate. The difference between a 3.1% interest rate and say a 5% interest rate over the course of a 30-year loan is about $14,000 that you would come up with out of pocket to eventually pay. It's a lot. With that, there are ways to manage the debt, hold your asset, and actually make money based on that debt. As I mentioned, in the first 8 to 10 years of a property in your mortgage, a majority of your monthly payment is going to the interest. The bank is going to make their money first. A great way to add equity to your property is to add principal payments each year. So there are a number of ways you can do this. It's completely and totally up to you. You can do lump sum principal payments. You can do once a year by making 1 additional payment. You can make 3 additional payments, however it works for you. But just to give you an idea, on that example that I gave you with a loan of $120,625 over a period of 30 years, it was just over $185,000. If you took just $500 a year, and that ends up being right about $42 a month, additional to your mortgage as a principal payment, that would cut that loan to 26.5 years and save you $8,415.41 in interest. $500 a year. That's 1 month's rent payment on a property that you have as an investment. Those principal payments also go to your equity, not to the interest. So if you're making those extra payments a year, specifically to principal, when it does come time to refinance or even sell, you're going to cash out that property at a much greater value into your pocket. By simply taking off 3.5 years and saving yourself almost $8,500 in interest. That $500 a year is going to add to your equity, and that cash out refinance is going to put more money into your pocket. You're paying on what the house is worth, not what you owe the bank. So you would think with cash or a loan, well, I'll just keep paying the loan. I don't want to refinance. If I pay the loan, you still need to be thinking about that $65,000 in interest. When they do a cash out refinance, it's just going to reset the interest. They're giving you the 75% value equity of the home. So they're giving you that money and they're just resetting the interest. So if you keep that up, you can actually continuously roll over equity on a house every 3 to 5 to 10 years. And you can own that property for 10 years and potentially refinance it 3, 4, 5 times and actually end up getting cash in hand back from the bank, what you paid for it. In $125,000, say if you're in a 10-year period, you refinance it 4 times, you could actually end up having up to $160,000 that has been given back into your pocket that the bank is giving you from their money. And when it comes time to sell, you list it for sale for what it owes and you break even on the sale point. You don't need to make money on the sale of a house to make money on an investment property. You make money on an investment property through rental or through through refinancing. The bank will literally cut you a check and give you money just so you'll keep paying them more interest. It sounds crazy, but it is a great way to do it. And that is a major, major difference, is understanding that there's a difference between consumer debt and asset debt. And you can roll mortgage after mortgage after mortgage in doing this in a structured way, continuously paying those off and doing cash out refinances. You will actually get to the point of a self-sustained portfolio. And what I mean by that is using the BRRRR strategy or the house hacking. You start out with one property and refinancing that allows you to buy 2. So now the income from that 2 is actually paying for your first property. Then you cash out and refinance those 2 properties. Now you have 6. And it's doing the same thing. And eventually you will get to the point where your 10-unit apartment complex is paying for your 4 fourplexes that you have. Those 4 fourplexes are paying for the 2 duplexes and the triplex that you have. And those are paying for the 5 single-family homes that you have and the house that you're living in. That becomes the self-sustaining rental portfolio. And that is when the goal goes from having money to now having money to spend. That is the ultimate goal of real estate investing, is to basically have it change your life. To know that for the rest of your life, you're going to have that steady income. It may fluctuate 10 to 15% on year to year, but it is always going to be there. And you're always going to have those adequate assets that you can cash out the equity. If something were to ever happen, God forbid, I had an accident and a medical bill and you need to pay it, refinance this property, you already know you have 40% equity in it, cash it out, pay your bill, and you know that you're fine because the rent income from your other properties are going to cover that mortgage without an issue. Completely self-sustained. With a self-sustained, you actually become your own bank. It sounds a little crazy, but with that, it really is. You become your own bank. You will get to a point with a self-sustained portfolio that you don't have to go to banks anymore. And then you reach the next stage where you can actually start becoming the banks for others, where people will come to you as a hard money lender and you will be able to loan them for them to build their own portfolios and pay you on a monthly status as the mortgage, as the bank. If you ever need money, you want to buy a new house, you need a new car, your kids are going to college, you don't have to go to a bank to get a loan. You can just cash out, refinance on the equity of your investment portfolio. Know that it's going to pay for and take care of itself. And now your life's been taken care of. You become your own bank and you have those assets to be able to draw on whenever you need it. That is one heck of a retirement plan, in my opinion. And it's something that I didn't realize when I was younger was possible. I always thought the best I could do is a couple $100 a month in extra income, maybe pay my car payment, make life a little easier. But realistically, it is very, very possible for every single person to do these strategies and to be successful. Knowledge and experience being able to find a mentor. And when I say a mentor, I don't mean somebody who's telling you have to pay them $150 to access their PowerPoint presentation online, or I'll help you out if you cut me into your deal. In my opinion, if somebody's charging you for their advice, they're not in the business of doing whatever you want them to help you with. They're in the business of selling advice. It's not going to be the type of advice, that's not going to be the kind of help that you want. Find a mentor, find somebody that's doing what you want to do, play with different ideas. If you're looking at real estate investing, really seriously consider becoming an agent. It was hands down the best decision I have had with my life to date. I have learned so much. I have absolutely no doubt that when the market hits the conditions that I like and I have been patient for, that I'm going to take off running and be very happy with the road that it leads me down. I see investors every day in every stage of it, and understanding, that they're just growing and growing, and it's going to take patience, and it's going to take a little bit of dirt underneath their fingernails. But it is very much something that each and every one of us, even you guys sitting in college, can get started. And somebody who is young, now I'm learning all of this at 28 and 29, not that I'm old. I know I'm not 30 yet. If I had known this when I was 19 or 20, I would have radically behaved differently in my 20s. Don't be afraid to go out and talk to a brokerage. Ask them if it would be possible. You can even ask if it would be possible to shadow them, find out if it's something you'd be willing to do. And becoming an agent, you don't have to do it full time. Actually, I would highly advise not doing it full time, because I thought I would be all gung ho and dive headfirst into it and be full time and not have to get another job. And I ended up driving Uber for the first 8.5 months that I was an agent, because it was a lot harder to get that first deal than I thought. Even with those properties that I had, those 11 sales I had from August to December with investors, they were very, very low income properties. And after all was said and done with your licensing and fees and processing commission split, it's very, very difficult to get to a livable wage in your first 2 years of real estate. I would highly recommend keeping your full-time job and start with real estate on the side. It is still profitable. It is still beneficial. And you are going to make enough money even doing part-time to be able to save. If you have a full-time job, that $1,000 or $2,000 you make on a commission every 2 to 3 months, if you're only selling 3 to 4 properties a year, at the end of the year, that's $10,000. That's $8,000 to $12,000 that you're going to have to put towards down payment and start your rental portfolio. That's after 1 year. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I missed. I'll turn it over.
Yeah, I mean, I have
if
a
there are any
comment.
questions, yeah, go ahead.
I think it's amazing. It's taken 2 years to get to this point.
Yeah.
Really.
It has. It has absolutely.
Um,
I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed even at 28. Like, oh, I'll just do this. I'll do 5 or 6 deals this year and I'll be ready to go. And there are so many different hats that you have to wear, especially as an investor, in the contemplation of becoming a landlord. When I say it's full-time, it's full-time. You have to be an expert in rental law, in lease negotiation. You have to go do showings. You are now a handyman. You are the 24-hour call. Yep. You are if you're the landlord at 2 a.m. when their heat goes out, it's your phone call. And guess what? You have to be at work at 7, but you get to wake up and go to their house to make sure that the furnace guy gets it taken care of so they don't freeze to death in the middle of January when it's 27 degrees. So now you've been up since 2. You've been at their house at 6. Now you got to be at work and go work a full day. And then when you get off, you got to go back to make sure that the invoice gets paid and that everything's working right. Being a landlord is not fun, and it can be very, very dangerous to financial health if you don't know what you're walking into. So that's where the mentorship idea comes in. Is find somebody that's doing this and find somebody that's willing to talk to you and help you. Because I'm sure when you tell them, hey, I'm thinking about doing this and I'm going to be a landlord, they will laugh. And then hopefully they will step in and try and give you an idea of what you're walking into, because rent collection, eviction notices, background checks, applications, like I said, maintenance, it could be plumbing, electrical, flooring. They lock themselves out of the house. You're now a locksmith, and you have so many different hats that you have to wear. And that's just maintaining. That has nothing to do with buying or selling of the property. how to research, what constitutes a good deal, what isn't, what matches your portfolio. There are so many. I know I've said it 10,000 times, but there are so many hats. And really, when I got into it, I'm so glad I did it as an agent, so that not only I could learn myself, but I could observe others and be comfortable that when the time came, I knew what I was walking into. If I had done this just right off the get, like, oh, I have $10,000, I'm going to go buy a house, I can tell you right now, I would have failed. I would have fallen on my face. I would have lost 10 grand, and I'd have put that property up for sale and probably sold it for less than I bought it for, because it was so bad. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I hate to say it, but I've seen, especially early in my career, I've seen that happen.
Good night. Sorry to interrupt.
So
But I've seen that happen, and luckily through my knowledge and growth, I've limited that with the clients that I work with now, where I can see the red flags where this is a bad idea and I can step in. And that's also a perfect reason, if you become an agent or not, to work with an agent who is investor friendly. Someone that understands the difference between, are you buying this house because you like the feel of the kitchen, or because your profit and loss cap rate and expenses are going to generate an 8% annual income each year? Find an agent who knows that. And actually, something we can do with the post, I don't know if we can do with the posting or not, but I would be more than happy to share my contact information. If anybody ever has any questions, wants to reach out, I am incredibly busy, and I can't promise I'll get back to you in the same day, but I promise I will get back to you, and I will be more than happy to help answer any questions and offer any advice that I can.
wonderful.
Do you have any other questions?
I just want to say one thing, and that is that you wanted it. You want it. And that's what drove you to learn it, to get it, and you have the capacity to do it. Get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it. That's something I just learned out of a book that I've been reading. And that is the biggest thing that you absolutely could have in what you're doing.
You definitely have to want
Not a lot of people could learn all that you know in 2 years.
I will, not to toot my own horn. I'm a little bit of a nerd. Actually, my nickname from my mother growing up was Spock. So it kind of, I knew,
okay.
I knew from the beginning that I was a numbers guy. I love data. My favorite channel on TV, I either watched Discovery Channel or History Channel. I was all about facts and concrete evidence and logical thinking and numbers and math. To me, numbers don't lie.
Yeah. And maybe you getting hurt was a blessing in disguise.
I'm waiting for me to start feeling that way.
Right.
And I'm starting to get there, but for a while, it was tough.
Yeah.
I mean, adversity for sure. But, sometimes it takes adversity for you to figure out, if at minimum, it may not answer what you want, but you're definitely going to figure out what you don't want. And I think my desire to want to learn and to decide to get into real estate actually came from me figuring out what I don't want. And sometimes that can be a better answer to figure out than what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for coming in, Tom.
Absolutely. Thank you for
awesome.
having me. I
It was a
appreciate it.
really great presentation.